This is Fantasy Baseball Today from CBSSports.com.
Welcome, everybody, to an exclusive presentation of Fantasy Baseball Today for CBS Local Sports. Make sure you watch us live, noon Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, for all your fantasy baseball advice. But right now, we'll tell you who to start and sit in Fantasy Week 13. I'm Adam Azer. That is Scott White. He's our hitting guru. Al Melchior, pitching genius. I hope you guys like your new titles. Let's get started. Al, you're starting Andrew Heaney with 2 starts next week.
That I am, and that was something I was willing to do and willing to recommend even before he took the mound for the Marlins, which he did Thursday night and pitched really well against the Mets. Just unfortunately for him, Zach Wheeler was a bit better, but even with a couple of pretty challenging matchups for next week, I think Heaney, just if you look what he's done in the minor leagues, incredible upside. This year's really started striking guys out, so could be a very, very good 2-start week for the young 23-year-old.
If you need a third baseman, Pablo Sandoval is your man, Duvall.
He is. He's picked things up again after a little bit of a rough patch. His numbers basically since late May are looking very good. And even though the matchups this week aren't especially in his favor in terms of what pitchers he's facing, the Giants face 7 right-handers. He's batting 100 points higher against them than lefties. And they're at home, where he's batting 65 points higher than on the road. And those splits have been pretty consistent throughout his career, just much better in those situations. So I feel good about starting him this week.
Kyle Gibson, 2 road starts at the Angels and at the Rangers, and he's been really good lately. Last 3 starts out, so you'll keep it going for 2 more.
Yeah, and really I think Gibson's success has gone back more than just those 3 starts. For over a month now. He's really been a different pitcher and a much improved pitcher, one who's been able to get batters to swing at a very, very high rate of pitches that are not in the strike zone. And that's enabled him to really fix an area that was a weakness for him, which was walking too many batters. Only 7 walks in the last 45 innings. I think Gibson will keep that rolling, even against a really good Angels lineup.
Scott, how about Ryan Howard, one of the hottest hitters in baseball entering the weekend?
Yeah, 3 home runs in his last 4 games. The one where he didn't hit a home run was 3 hits. He's really hot, and you look at the pace he's on in terms of home runs and RBI, might actually be a little overlooked in fantasy. The Phillies, because of a doubleheader this week, play 8 games. It's a pretty rare thing. They're the only team doing that this week. 6 of them, at least right now, are against right-handed pitchers, which is good news for Howard. All of them are at home, too, which is a great place to hit for any player. But Howard in particular, his numbers last year in a bad season, overall, he hit .311 with a 10.11 OPS at home last season. So on a hot streak right now, you got to like him.
All right, that's a good point. Drew Smiley has 2 starts. You might want to get him in your lineup, but then again, you might not, right, Al?
Right. I mean, not a terrible choice, but one I would try to avoid if at all possible. And it's really about the matchups, because Smiley has been much better of late, and he's solidified his position in the Tigers' rotation. They're not yanking him back to the bullpen and changing his roll-up like they were earlier in the year. But a disturbing trend for Smiley, he's always been a fly ball pitcher. That tendency's been even stronger of late. So I really do worry, and this is going to sound weird, but the Astros matchup, which used to be something you would cheer for if you had a pitcher in your rotation, now they've become sort of a tough matchup, a tough ballpark, and some power hitters there.
Scott, you're sitting Derek Norris next week.
Yeah, the Athletics play just 5 games next week, which isn't quite as rare as 8, but it's still pretty uncommon. Low number, obviously. All 5 of them are in the NL, so they're not going to have access to the DH all week. They don't have a regular DH, but they usually use that spot to get an extra catcher in the lineup, John Jaso. So just without the availability of the DH spot, that puts more pressure on them to play Jaso at catcher, which could cost Norris at bats in a 5-game week anyway. I think I'd just avoid him.
Jose Quintana, 2 starts. They are not in good venues, at Baltimore and at Toronto, and sit him.
And sit Quintana, and the venues are just one. They're a reason for sure, but just one of the reasons why I wouldn't bother with Quintana this week, because his main appeal really has been consistency. And he's been a little less consistent of late, but even if you just compare him against some of the other 2-star pitchers that could be available in your leagues, there's some similar types who are just better at what they do than Quintana is. Mark Burley, good control guy, Alfredo Simon, good ground ball pitcher. So they're all kind of in that similar category, but I feel like Quintana is just less reliable than some of those other available options.
And Gene Segura, supposed to be a must-start shortstop, but not in Week 13, Scott White.
I've called him must-start every week this year. You're about ready to sit him because I'm about to give you an excuse to sit him. The Brewers depending on who the Rockies choose to fill in on Thursday, could face as many as 4 lefties this week. They're at least facing 3, so it's a lot either way. And Gene Segura this year hitting only .161 against left-handed pitchers. I'm not sure what shortstop you could get to fill in for him. Maybe Eugenio Suarez if he's still out there in your league. But if you can't avoid starting Segura this week, it's a good idea.
That is hitting guru Scott White, pitching genius Al Melchior. Check out their columns on the website. Check out our show live noon Eastern time, Monday through Friday, fantasynews.cbssports.com. We have a podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher that you can enjoy as well. Have a great weekend. Good luck finishing up Week 12 and into Week 13. And we'll talk to you next time here on an exclusive presentation of Fantasy Baseball Today for CBS Local Sports.